see any further tax taken from them. That was really important. But we also set out as priorities, we are going to invest in our National Health Service.
The lab in Wuhan, and they're a very heavily Chinese-influenced organisation.
Law and order, folks, on our streets is breaking down. This Prime Minister hasn't got an earthly clue.
Nigel Farage, the voice of British nationalism, caught in friendly conversation with Labour's Keir Starmer. It sounds impossible, doesn't it? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. But what if I told you this clip reveals something far more significant than a simple chat? Buckle up, because we're about to expose the hidden alliances and rivalries shaping Britain's future. Picture this: Nigel Farage, the firebrand of British nationalism, and Sir Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party, locked in what appears to be a friendly conversation.
Well, they're absolutely fed up, and I think it's worth sort of informing your viewers that on paper, Keir Starmer and the Labour Party have a...
The speech is being billed as a plan for change. We're expecting targets on things like crime, NHS waiting lists, early years learning.
It's a scene that sent shockwaves through British politics, leaving many wondering if they've stepped into an alternate reality. The clip in question emerged during a debate on the assisted dying bill, a contentious issue that's divided opinion across party lines. But it wasn't the bill that caught everyone's attention.
His conclusion, very simple: it's all the far right, as if they're causing all of the problems. No, the far right are a reaction.
It's a government body under the United Nations. The British government's just agreed in the last 2 weeks to give it a further £310 million.
Instead, it was the sight of these two political opposites, seemingly finding common ground, that set social media ablaze. British patriots, long accustomed to Farage's anti-establishment rhetoric, were left scratching their heads. Was this the same man who'd spent years railing against the political elite? Some took to Twitter, expressing their disbelief and disappointment. Has Farage gone soft? One user asked, while another lamented, "I thought he was different from the rest of them." Political commentators, meanwhile, had a field day. Some saw it as a sign of growing political maturity, praising both men for putting aside their differences. Others were more cynical, suggesting it was nothing more than a calculated move to boost their respective images. As the clip spread like wildfire across social media platforms, public perception began to shift.
The colour of the skin of anyone that gets stopped. We need tougher prison sentences for anybody carrying a knife.
And I think that's the situation. So this is a very, very fragile government. And if you imagine, it's quite difficult to get the average person politically motivated.
Those who'd always seen Farage as a divisive figure suddenly found themselves reconsidering. Could there be more to the man than his public persona suggested? Starmer, too, faced scrutiny. Was this evidence of him cozying up to the right or simply engaging in civil discourse? The true nature of their conversation remains somewhat of a mystery. Lip-reading experts have suggested they were discussing the finer points of the assisted dying bill, but without audio, it's impossible to be certain.
And it is all about relentless prioritisation. Insiders tell me the government know they can't do everything. They need priorities.
Constitutional mandate, because they had all the right votes in the right places, so they got the right seats, enough seats.
This lack of concrete information has only fueled further speculation and debate. What we can say with certainty is that this brief interaction has broader implications for British politics. It raises questions about the nature of political discourse in an age of increasing polarization. Can politicians from opposite ends of the spectrum find common ground? Or is this simply a case of political theatre designed to manipulate public opinion? As we delve deeper into this story, we'll explore how this unexpected alliance might reshape the political landscape. We'll examine Starmer's attempts to position himself as a quietly patriotic figure, and how this contrasts with Farage's more outspoken brand of nationalism. We'll also look at how both men are navigating the complex terrain of modern British politics, where traditional party lines are increasingly blurred.
The pandemic had come through the wet markets in China, not the fact that it was a leak.
But I'm worried, not just about the events in Southport, but about societal decline that is happening in our country.
But first, let's take a closer look at Sir Keir Starmer's patriotism paradox. How does a Labour leader balance national pride with progressive values in today's Britain? And more importantly, how is this balancing act being received by voters across the political spectrum? As the dust settles on the Farage-Starmer interaction, a more intriguing question emerges. Is Starmer's quiet patriotism a shrewd political strategy or a genuine conviction? The answer could reshape Labour's electoral fortunes and challenge long-held assumptions about left-wing politics in the UK. Keir Starmer's claim of being quietly patriotic has raised eyebrows across the political spectrum. In a country still grappling with its colonial past and uncertain future, Starmer's brand of patriotism presents a curious conundrum. How does one champion national pride while acknowledging historical wrongs? The Labour leader's balancing act might just redefine what it means to be patriotic in 21st century Britain. Starmer's approach stands in stark contrast to Nigel Farage's outspoken nationalism. While Farage wraps himself in the Union Jack and makes grand proclamations about British sovereignty, Starmer opts for a more subdued expression of national pride. He speaks of a patriotism rooted in public service, the NHS, and British values of fairness and tolerance. But does this resonate with voters? Public perception of Starmer's patriotic credentials remains mixed. Some see his approach as refreshing, a much-needed antidote to the bombastic nationalism of the right. Others view it as weak or insincere, a calculated attempt to win over Conservative voters without alienating Labour's traditional base. Social media is awash with conflicting opinions, from those praising Starmer's nuanced stance to others accusing him of fence-sitting. Political analysts are divided on the effectiveness of Starmer's strategy. Dr. Emma Thompson, a professor of political science at LSE, argues that Starmer's quiet patriotism could be a masterstroke. It allows him to appeal to a broader range of voters without falling into the trap of jingoism, she explains. However, critics like John Smith, a veteran Labour campaigner, worry that Starmer's approach lacks the passion needed to inspire the electorate.
Maybe this should have been done faster with an earlier budget and an earlier launch of the missions, but it basically means the government set up, the Labour government set up
national mandate, a strong constitutional mandate, but a weak national mandate. And so they've called it a loveless landslide.
People want to feel proud of their country, Smith contends. Starmer's brand of patriotism feels too academic, too detached. The impact on Labour's electoral prospects remains to be seen. Will Starmer's quiet patriotism win over the Red Wall voters who abandoned Labour in 2019? Or will it be seen as too little, too late? The upcoming local elections will provide a crucial test of Starmer's strategy. Starmer's patriotism stance affects his appeal to different voter groups in complex ways. Among younger, urban voters, his measured approach to national pride seems to resonate. They appreciate his acknowledgement of Britain's flaws alongside its strengths. However, in more traditional Labour heartlands, there's a sense that Starmer's patriotism lacks the emotional punch needed to counter right-wing narratives.
Into New Year, that's what the government stands for. And there may be noises off over the past few months.
To get into Parliament. However, nationally, 80% of the public didn't vote for them. So they have a very weak...
As we consider Starmer's patriotism paradox, we can't ignore the role Nigel Farage has played in shaping this debate. Farage's brand of unapologetic nationalism has forced other politicians to recalibrate their approach. But has Farage's influence on British politics been as profound as he claims? Let's examine how the self-styled champion of Brexit has truly impacted the political landscape. While politicians struggle to get their message heard, Nigel Farage seems to effortlessly command attention. Is it just his controversial statements, or is there more to his media strategy? The tactics Farage employs have reshaped political communication in Britain, for better or worse. Farage's ability to dominate media coverage is nothing short of remarkable. He's mastered the art of crafting soundbites that grab headlines and spark debates. His strategy is deceptively simple. Say something outrageous, wait for the media frenzy, then bask in the spotlight. But there's more to it than mere shock value. Farage has an uncanny knack for tapping into public frustrations and articulating them in ways that resonate with a significant portion of the population. This approach has proven incredibly effective, but it's not without its critics. Many media outlets have faced backlash for giving Farage disproportionate airtime.
Taxpayers' money. Their performance during the pandemic was catastrophic. They insisted that
is out there shared by tens of millions of people. Let me be clear. I don't support street violence. I don't support thuggery in any way at all.
The argument goes that by constantly featuring Farage, even if it's to criticize him, they're inadvertently amplifying his message. Some journalists have questioned whether their pursuit of ratings and clicks is compromising their responsibility to provide balanced coverage. Farage's controversial statements have had a profound impact on British political discourse. Take his comments on immigration during the Brexit campaign. By framing the issue in stark, often divisive terms, he forced other politicians to respond, effectively setting the agenda for the debate. More recently, his remarks on the Ukraine conflict sparked outrage, but also pushed the boundaries of acceptable discourse on the topic. Social media has played a crucial role in amplifying Farage's message. His provocative tweets and Facebook posts often go viral, reaching far beyond his core supporters. This digital savvy has allowed Farage to bypass traditional media gatekeepers and speak directly to his audience. It's a strategy that's been particularly effective in rallying support for causes like Brexit and maintaining his relevance even when he's not holding elected office.
See any further tax taken from them. That was really important, but we also set out as priorities, we are going to invest in our National Health Service. The changes that we've made, I say, the door is open and you can leave.
The broader implications of Farage's media tactics for political discourse are concerning. His approach has normalized a more confrontational, polarizing style of politics. Other politicians, feeling the pressure to cut through the noise, have started adopting similar tactics. This has led to a coarsening of political debate, with nuance often sacrificed in favor of attention-grabbing soundbites. The long-term effects of Farage's media strategy on British politics are still unfolding. On one hand, he's undeniably brought certain issues to the forefront of public debate. On the other, his tactics have contributed to a more divided political landscape. As mainstream politicians grapple with how to counter Farage's approach, they face a difficult balancing act. How can they compete for attention without resorting to the same divisive tactics? It's a challenge that will shape British politics for years to come. Farage's influence has forced a seismic shift in British politics. Once fringe ideas have become mainstream talking points. How have the Tories and Labour responded to this new political reality? And what does it mean for the future of the UK? Nigel Farage has emerged as a political disruptor, reshaping the landscape of British politics in ways few could have predicted. His ability to tap into public frustrations and articulate them in simple, provocative terms has forced major parties to reassess their positions on key issues. The Conservatives and Labour have found themselves in the uncomfortable position of having to respond to Farage's rhetoric, often shifting their own policies in the process. Take immigration, for example. Farage's hardline stance on border control has pushed the Tories to adopt increasingly stringent immigration policies. The party's promise to reduce net migration to the tens of thousands can be traced directly to pressure from Farage and UKIP. Labour, too, has had to toughen its stance on immigration, with Keir Starmer recently emphasising the need for a points-based system. EU relations provide another clear example of Farage's influence. His relentless campaign for Brexit not only led to the 2016 referendum, but continues to shape Britain's post-EU trajectory. The Conservative Party, once divided on the issue, has fully embraced a hard Brexit position. Even Labour, traditionally pro-EU, has had to accept Brexit as a fait accompli, focusing instead on how to make the best of Britain's new status. This shift in major party policies presents a dilemma for mainstream politicians. How can they address Farage's talking points without alienating their traditional supporters or appearing to legitimize his more extreme views. It's a delicate balancing act that has led to some awkward moments for politicians on both sides of the aisle. Political analyst Dr. Sarah Thompson notes, Farage has effectively moved the Overton window on several key issues. Ideas that were once considered fringe are now part of mainstream political discourse. This presents a real challenge for established parties as they try to navigate this new landscape. As we look to the future of British politics, several scenarios emerge.
Now they've gone further, and on the table they've got something called the Pandemic Treaty, which, when it goes through in a year's time, will mean
how to deal with it. We need to start getting tough. We need to use stop and search, regardless.
The Conservative Party might continue its rightward shift, potentially absorbing more of Farage's policy positions to prevent losing voters to future Farage-led movements. Labour, on the other hand, faces the challenge of crafting a vision of patriotism and national identity that can compete with Farage's nostalgic nationalism without compromising its progressive values. There's also the possibility of a new centrist movement emerging, one that rejects both Farage's populism and the major parties' attempts to co-opt his rhetoric. However, the first-past-the-post electoral system makes it difficult for new parties to gain a foothold in Westminster. The extent to which Farage has shaped British politics cannot be overstated. From Brexit to immigration, from sovereignty to national identity, his influence is evident in the language politicians use, the policies they propose, and the issues that dominate public debate. Whether you view him as a necessary shake-up to a stagnant system or a divisive force in British politics, one thing is clear. The political landscape of the UK has been irrevocably altered by Nigel Farage's particular brand of populist nationalism. As we've seen, Nigel Farage's impact on British politics is undeniable. His media-savvy and provocative statements have reshaped political discourse, forcing mainstream parties to adapt. The relationship between Farage, the media, and traditional politics is complex and often contentious. His ability to dominate headlines has both amplified his message and sparked debates about responsible journalism. But what does this mean for the future of political discourse in Britain? Will we see a continued trend towards polarization and soundbite politics? Or will there be a backlash against this approach? The answer may lie in how voters respond to these tactics in upcoming elections. As consumers of political news, we must remain vigilant. It's crucial to look beyond sensational headlines and examine the substance of political arguments. By critically assessing media narratives and politicians' messaging, we can make more informed decisions about the future of our country. The power to shape political discourse ultimately lies with us, the voters.